And welcome back to the Zanpakuto creation series. And I've already messed this up, but whatever. Normally I wait for the image, I wait a little bit and then the image pops up. But I already messed up. It's all good. Let's just keep going. This one comes to us from Velvet Crowe, who asks, what is the Zanpakuto of Velvet Crowe? From Tales of Berseria. I believe it's a game, and I think there's an anime for it too. Yeah, this is another one of those scenarios where, hey, I gotta do a what team, what lantern, what Zanpakuto goes to a character from a series that I have never watched, read, or played. So I have to go by what I've looked up and what I've basically found for this character. And what I found, actually, she's a pretty compelling character to quite a degree. She started out very kind, cheerful, loving, and mostly a normal life, but after being imprisoned for 3 years, being forced to fight, kill, and devour demons, her universe become ripped, and she basically became very cold, not heartless. She has emotions, certainly, but rage-fueled, vengeance-driven, and very, aloof, brutally honest, and, about her goals and how she views other people, and she has a very aggressive demeanor, especially it ignites whenever a tourist is nearby. Because of childhood trauma of losing her arm and her brother, she inevitably shuts down herself from emotions, viewing them as an obstacle that will hold her back to her goal to kill a tourist whom she once loved and trusted. But still, she's ultimately able to come back from this. So this is ultimately who she became, as opposed to who she started out with. So the question on what a Zanpakuto for this character is probably determined a little bit by when she would have attained it. Most likely, she would have attained her Zanpakuto in her teenage formative years. So it's likely that we're looking at the older version of her. Now, that being said, that's a good question in Bleach when you think about it. Is who you are when you're younger and who you are when you're older really vary the amount, or really vary the ability of the Zanpakuto, who the Zanpakuto ultimately is? Can there be such a drastic change in your personality that depending on when you have access to your Zanpakuto, the embodiment of your soul could actually change? I lend myself to thinking no. Nothing in Bleach has really implied that, but it's an interesting concept to say the least. As it stands, though, what do I think this Zanpakuto is? Well, I think this Zanpakuto is a melee type. I think based on what she's actually been through, like the fighting she's done, I do think she's predominantly a melee fighter and has a melee type Zanpakuto. Possibly with a minor Kido-esque ability, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Unlike most Shinigami, though, I think she probably lends herself more to a Wakizashi style of fighting. I think it's a much quicker weapon to use than, say, a normal katana, because a katana is longer. Usually requires 2 hands, whereas this leaves one hand and allows her other hand to be free, which she does have still a false arm, I guess you could say, a gauntlet blade as it is. So this could basically allow her to dual wield her one arm while using using the blade in the other hand. So I think a Wakizashi actually would fit her a bit better than, say, a katana would. In terms of the release, it would be Shred Them All. The name of the Zanpakuto is Shredding Centipede for its Shikai and Eternal Centipede for its Bankai, or Shredda Mukade for its Shikai and Enno Mukade for its Bankai. Why I just said that this seems like a very odd type of Zanpakuto. Obviously, the spirit of this is either an insectoid-like human, almost like the My Hero character, something. He's something centipede, where his quirk literally is his head is a living centipede. But I see it either as some sort of humanoid insect in that regard, or almost like a world serpentine centipede within her, inner world that she converses with. Now, why a centipede, though? That seems like a very cold obviously insectoid-like creature to give a character like this. You'd think this would be more like a Mayuri kind of spirit, or hell, Shinso. We've never seen Shinso's spirit. We've seen a lot of the spirits, but we haven't seen Shinso's spirit. And all those spirits, by the way, not all of them are human. Like, that was the humanoid version of them, but not all of them are human. We know that for a fact because we know Hyorin Maru is not a human that can take the form of a dragon. We've only ever seen it in the manga as a dragon. And Minazuki might not even be a humanoid either. So, and we know for a fact Zabimaru isn't either. But why a centipede for? It would seem like it would fit more like with a Mayuri type character or something like that. Well, centipedes are very ruthless, very are voracious hunters, really, and they're very dangerous. I mean, you don't want to be bit by a centipede. It probably won't kill you, but you do not want to be bit by a centipede, particularly like Arizona or giant desert centipedes. You do not want to get bitten by those things. They are not pleasant. But I think it actually fits with the more ruthless, single-minded mentality she ends up having later on. Now, she grows out of that, but I don't think it ultimately changes who she is overall at that point. And that brings us now to what the Shikai, what the Zanpakuto looks like when it's released, and what the Bankai and the Shikai actually do. When released, I liken it to something akin to Zabimaru, which Zabimaru is kind of a whip blade, a big giant whip blade, but a whip blade. This is more akin to a whip with blades on it, in the style of a centipede. Now, what I mean by that is, it is probably a bit longer than Zabimaru without being extended, but its legs are like hooked blades, with even some blades to represent the head. It looks like a centipede sword, basically. However, when she extends it, it moves very much in a similar fashion to Renji's Zabimaru, or Ivy from Soul Calibur's blade. At the same time, though, it's also got some extra ability. It has an extra ability where she can kind of move it like independently. It's not just extend, retract, extend, retract. It's more extend and move how you will it to a certain degree. Kind of how I depicted Orochimaru's sword a little bit with the snake aspect, but in this case, it's a giant bladed centipede. This, I think, works really well with the kind of melee style fighting she's predominantly known for, as it's still a melee type Zanpakuto that works to really shred it. Unlike Zabimaru, which could like twist around an opponent and just kind of keep him there, if this thing twists around with you, she can pull it and shred you to ribbons if you're not careful. The Bankai of this is what I kind of imagine Hyorin, the visor, the little blonde visor who was beating Ichigo up, Hiyori. So kind of what I imagine her Bankai would kind of be like is that the centipede, to go with the idea of the eternal centipede, is now turns into this nigh infinitely long blade, just or perpetual blade, just a mass of blades wrapped in coils, constantly wrapped around this character. Now, you think, well, how is this thing able to like operate or move at all? Well, there still is a head to the centipede here. Might even be a much larger head now, and she's just wrapped around by this eternal centipede that, in theory, isn't actually eternal in terms of its length, infinite, but it is actually. It does have an end, but it's so long that it's near impossible to note. Like with Zenbo and Zakura Kageyoshi, even though there is actually a limited amount of those blades, the limit is so vast, it looks like an infinite ocean of petals. Similar concept here. And here she'd be able to just keep herself in like almost an absolute defense, constantly wrapped, while still firing coils of giant, like massive spinning blades and the head of the centipede, which could probably chomp on the opponent as well. It'd be a very, kind of destructive melee type Zanpakuto. Now, it's not a Keto type, so it doesn't have really any abilities beyond that. Its defenses obviously could be breached by a powerful enough attack or cunning enough opponent. It still has, at some point, a limit distance. It has a lot of range, particularly in Bankai, but it does have a limit in terms of its range. While it is an effective melee tool, in terms of straight sword combat, it's a bit more cumbersome than say her Wakizashi is, or even a katana is, because it is a massive centipede blade. So while she can still very much use it for straight on sword combat, it does suffer a little bit when you get to the Shikai, because it is now weighted a bit more. But obviously, the user of the Shikai, or the user of Zanpakuto, can wield it a lot easier than, say, someone else could. So, ultimately, it is still a very effective and powerful blade, in my opinion. But that's the best I can do based on a character I knew nothing about going into this. What do you think about this Zanpakuto? Do you like this idea, or do you dislike this idea, or are you just kind of meh about it? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified, and I'll see you later.